Hey.
Nico Rhodes.
Hey, Thomas.
You know, I don't actually have a bio for you. Like a rundown.
Like a write-up, a
like
rundown?
who is Nico Rhodes? I don't actually have a thing.
No one knows, Thomas.
No one knows. But why don't we start with a land acknowledgement?
Sounds great.
Sure. So
always a good idea.
we are grateful to be here, working, playing, enjoying life together on the traditional and unceded territory of the Nanaimo people. And we are in honor of their thousands of years of tradition and caring for this land. And for that, we say Haichka.
Haichka.
Yeah, Haichka. Yeah.
Always.
Thank you. So, yeah, I don't have a bio for you, but
I can give you a rundown if you want.
well, let's do that through the form of me digging.
Oh, dig.
How about I do some digging?
I like that.
So, I don't know. Here's what I don't know about you.
Sure.
So, I don't know how long you've been a musician, although I suspect most of your life music has been a pretty big part.
Definitely.
I don't know how you ended up at Unity.
Oh, that's a funny story, actually.
I don't know what you even think of Unity.
That's another interesting story.
Principles and our relationship with spirituality and how we preach. I mean, you could be here or not be here. I don't know whether you care to be here. All of this stuff is a curiosity that I have at times.
Good questions.
When I'm sitting behind the drum kit, I'm like, is Nico here because he actually gets something out of this, or is this just a gig and he could care less?
Right.
So
wherever
you want to start.
Okay, well, let's start with the whole music. Where did all that all come from? Where did that all start? So, yeah, music has been part of my life for forever, essentially. Like since I was 3.5 years old. Yeah. So my mom, who you may be aware is a singer, extraordinaire. Obviously, growing up around that was a huge influence, and I wasn't even aware of the fact that I was sort of being positively indoctrinated into this idea that music is everywhere and it's essential and it is this means of communication and community and expression that just transcends pretty much everything, at least for me, right? And for a lot of people. And I was lucky enough at a young age that my mom taught me some piano, and then her musicians basically took over my tutelage. So I had her pianist, Doug Dodd, teaching me from the age of 5 or 6 onwards. And then her clarinetist, her woodwind player, was teaching me saxophone and flute and clarinet. The bass player and the violin player would be showing me stuff on. And so just by osmosis, really.
Where were you? Where did you live then?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I was growing up in East Van.
Okay. So this is all in
Vancouver. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was until I was about 6. We lived in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So my dad was the technical director of the East Cultural Center, fondly known as the Culch.
Yeah.
Down in kind of Venables area there.
Yeah. I know it well. I used to live a block away.
Oh my God, we were probably neighbors.
Yeah.
Man. That's my neighborhood. It's my hood. And then he also ran the Vancouver Folk Festival for many years. Okay. So that was the other side of it too, right? Like just constantly exposed to different things. So yeah, growing up in Vancouver, having those rehearsals, there would be 3-hour rehearsals, 4-hour rehearsals. And I have these fragments of memory of being, 4, 5, 6 years old in the corner with manuscript paper and writing. I wrote this one piece called the White Wolf Symphony. And I was do, 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 do. It was, really, twinkle, twinkle, little star.
So when you say write, were you writing notes?
Yeah, I was writing notes.
Okay. So you already knew
I had
theory
some basic understanding. Okay. I could hear the pitch and scribble it. Right. So, and I didn't even know that was good or bad, right or wrong. It was just I want to remember this thing that I'm creating. And Doug, Joel's pianist, my teacher, was hey, this is how you write these notes. And I think I wrote everything in C major, even if it wasn't in C major, it was just written in C major. Because I don't think accidentals had entered my mind yet. Right. I was I got do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and that's it. But yeah, so I'd write these little melodies down. And the other thing too, okay, so we're jumping around a bit, but when we moved to Nanaimo, which was a huge shift, right? My dad kept working in Vancouver and would commute back and forth, so I'd see him, once every couple of weeks or so, and I'd always hear the Harley rolling up the hill, and I knew he was coming.
So he was a
biker.
Oh,
my mom was a biker too, actually. Both of them rode Harleys. Yeah. Okay. She had a Sporty, he had a little lowrider.
So you actually just naturally come from coolness.
I mean, I'm actually the least cool member of my family. Full transparency. I often laughed about that. As I was growing up, people were like, "Oh my God, your mom's so cool. Oh my God, your dad's so cool." And I was like, what happened? Where did I go wrong? I took a left turn. I feel like I've come into it more as I got older. But when I was younger, I was just such a nerd, such a dork. I mean, still am. But yeah, what was I saying? The piano.
Moved to Nanaimo.
Moved to Nanaimo. Yeah. So then at that point, this is where things get really interesting in my world, at least. We moved into Nanaimo. We bought this house on Garner Crescent, just kind of on the edge of Harewood, and which is still where my family lives today, my mom and Doug. And Doug bought the lower half, piano player, and my mom and dad bought the upper half, which is pretty cool. Again, I just took these things for granted. Of course, they're friends. It's like family. We'll buy a house together. And so there's this grand piano downstairs. And so one, downstairs was always, cooler, especially in the summertime. So it was a nice place to be. And two, Doug would have cookies and he'd have like a hockey net set up so I could play like floor hockey. And he'd be sitting there writing film scores, like for these documentaries and whatnot, and symphony scores.
Right.
And as he did that, he had these old synth modules and he would say, hey, do you want to hear what I'm doing? And he'd hit spacebar and I'd hear these crazy sounds, right? And he would explain to me, oh, this is how a synthesizer works. And it wasn't settling in, but it was settling in a little bit. And at that point, one day, I think I must have been 6. He basically said, hey, do you want to record something? And I was like, we can do that. He had this old 4-track reel to reel, oh my God, it's so cool with the meters and everything. And I remember I wrote this song called I'm Off to Dublin Town. I'm off to go to Dublin town. And there was another one called Socia.
And how old are you?
I'm like 6 years old.
6 years old.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And my mom has tapes of this.
Okay.
Like there's like Socia, like this little kid just like, I'm belting my heart out. It's actually quite adorable. Pitch is okay actually too. It's not bad. I was impressed. And then after, getting into my 7s and 8s and 9s, we'd hold concerts. So again, this was Doug mostly and my mom and my dad, but really Doug was the instigator. He would say like, okay, here's what we're going to do. He had a little pipe organ downstairs, a little miniature one. So I would sit underneath and push the foot pedals with my hands and I'd learn all the bass lines and he'd play the 2 manuals and we would charge like a nickel, right? And I'd make like $1 and like, I'd go to the candy store and I'd buy like $1 worth of candy. I was like, I'm going to give a concert every week. People are paying me for this.
This is incredible.
This is the economy's flowing. Like, let's go. So right away I had this association too of like, I can do something I love that is meaningful to me. It brings other people joy. And bonus, someone's giving me some little shiny
and
silver
I get
coins.
candy.
Yeah, I get candy. I've been like,
there's a payoff.
There's a payoff. And then that really started to escalate when I got into my teens. When I was about 13, when I was a kid, I told my mom, I'm going to be a musician. I think I was about 5 or 6. And I also wanted to be a farmer, a firefighter, and an astrophysicist.
Okay.
So there was a mix. There was a fork in the road at some point.
Yeah.
But it really locked in. And when I was about 13, I told my mom, I said, I had a very strange sense of myself. I was like, I'm not good enough. I need to work harder. Help me find a way to do that. And Doug at that point, such a good teacher, he actually was like, there's not much more I can really teach Nico on the piano. He still had lots to teach me in other aspects. He still teaches me a lot today. And there are still things he does on the piano that totally rock my world. I'm like, I never thought to do that. But he had bestowed 7-8 years of wisdom on me at this point. Mm-hmm. And he was like, we're going to find you a teacher. So they set me up with this old British lady named Jackie Drose. And she had actually taught Diana Krall piano and Phil Dwyer and all these other great musicians. Right. But Diana Krall's like the household name.
The one we know.
The one we know.
Yeah.
And I went over there and I played the first movement to Moonlight Sonata, do, 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 do. I'm playing that little thing. And I'm thinking in my head, no, I've been practicing this all summer, okay? I've been practicing all summer. I knew I was going to meet her in September. I had this I'm going to impress this lady. And I knew she was important. I knew she was like a big deal. She taught all these award-winning concert pianists, and it was like, okay, I've got to. And she'd retired. That was the other thing. So I had to impress her. Otherwise, she wasn't going to teach me. And I had this vision of like, I need to get better. And this lady, everyone's telling me this lady's going to make me better. So I'm going to impress her. And I was practicing hours, months and months and months. And I go in, and I play the first 3 notes. Boom, boom, boom. Stops me right there. And I'm petrified. And I'm raging. I'm like, how dare you? Right? Like the ego just like, how, excuse me. Like
don't you know who I think I am?
Don't you know who I think I am? Like, it's a good talk. So I'm like, excuse me. And I'm like, she goes, stop. And this is the period too. She's smoking right by the window and she's blowing smoke out the window. Yeah, stop it. Yeah. Right? I'm like, smell, right? And she comes over and she goes, she looks at my hands. She goes, you have good hands. Nice long fingers, not too thin. Mm-hmm. Nice thumb, long pinky, good. We have a problem though. I was like, you know? She goes, you have a thumb like an anvil. And I was just like, I think my whole world just shattered. I was like, she's not going to teach me. Yeah. The whole mission is over. The whole life quest, it's gone. I'm never going to get to Dublin town. I'm never like, so see ya. Like I'm out, right? Like my whole life flashed before my eyes. She goes, play it again. And I played it again. She goes, stop. She goes, lighter, even lighter. And I played it again. I could feel the piano pushing back against me for the first time because I always played it. Yeah. For the first time, I felt the instrument responding. And I was like, and she saw it, right? I could see it in her eyes, and she's looking at me, and she didn't stop me, so I kept going, and I started playing, and I was breathing, and she stops me about 30 seconds in. She goes, I'll teach you. I'll see you next Friday. That was it. No good job. Yeah. No, I will teach you. Yeah, yeah. Next Friday, 1:30, be here. And so I'd go there every week after school, and she put books on the back of my hands. If the book fell, I had to start the piece over again. Silent wrists, Nico, silent wrists. Wow. If I played a piece flawlessly but without emotion, she would rip me to shreds. Right. She used to quote Vladimir Horowitz, to make a mistake is acceptable. To play without emotion is absolutely unacceptable. Right. That is just, and we did that for 4 years. Wow. She took me from being a real, lukewarm amateur to competing and winning awards and all that kind of stuff. And then when I was about 16, 17, she was like, are you going to be a concert pianist or are you going to play piano and other things? There's two kinds of music in her world. Right. Classical music and whatever that is. And I said, well, Jackie, I was getting into jazz at the time. I want to do other things. She went, good. I've done my job. Right. And she gave me a big hug. She bought me a burger. She told me she was proud of me, and off you went. Off I went. And that's Valerie's mom. Valerie comes here, Brian. And yeah. Wow. So there's a connection here. Connection. Wow. That was a long story. Sorry. Yeah, no, that's okay. No, that's the long story. That's really, it's great to hear. You just reminded me of something though. I heard, which comes around coaching. Mm-hmm. And it was a recent story I heard from one of the players on the Canucks. And he used to be coached by Rick Tocchet in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And they were on the ice pre-game or at a practice. And the coach came up to him and said, you're going to have an NHL career, but you're no 17 or 18 minute a game guy. Yeah. You're just not that. Yeah. And he said to him, he goes, well, I guess you better make me one. And that actually changed the coach's view of what his job was. That this player challenged him to say, okay, great. Yeah. But how are you going to make me that? I totally relate to that. Actually, my uncle, when I was 16 or 17, about 17, he is a very stern man, but also a very funny man. And again, at this point, I'm getting a little bit big for my britches, and I played him something, and he basically said to me, "Yeah, that's cute." and it was funny because it was like he was like, "You're very good, but you're not great." Wow. But it was on the table. And then years later, I kind of came back with a bit of like, well, look at me. Look, I got this career now. And he went, yeah, good. Now you're great. But you could be greater. And it was like, but people like that who just put that hurdle in front of you. And several times in my life, I've had teachers. I've had other musicians. Ben Enriquez, he's a saxophone teacher at VIU. I don't think he even knows this story. He came to Nanaimo when I was 15 and someone was bragging about me, and I was in the corner, and he says, oh, there's this kid. He's 15. He's really talented. And I overheard him. He said, you know what? There's one in every town. And I was just like shattered, right? Yeah. But those were pivotal moments where I remember I wake up the next day going, it's 7 a.m. I'm going to practice because I got to prove that guy wrong. Not even out of spite. It was just he woke something up in myself. I had an awareness that I wasn't achieving my full potential. Right. And it wasn't that I was like, I'm going to show him. It was more like, oh, he rang the bell. And in that moment, I knew I could do better. Mm-hmm. And once, at least for me, once I know I can do something better and I listen to that knowing, because I think we all know, but as soon as that awareness enters my mind, it's like an alarm clock with no snooze button. It's like I cannot snooze it. So whether that's, you know, something in my life, or whether it's music, whether it's cooking, knitting, an activity, a relationship, a friendship, it's like the moment someone rings that bell and they're like, hey, you know what? This is not your best.
Right.
It's like
challenge laid.
Challenge laid. Let's go.
Yeah.
And it won't stop ringing, whether that's good or bad. I mean, sometimes it can be a little bit annoying.
Right.
You know, there's that perfectionistic aspect that can be challenging.
Right.
But I think that's the driving force. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually on a call earlier today, and a friend of mine was saying that he was at the gym, and he had two guys working out beside him.
Yeah.
And they were, they were impressed with the amount of weight he was working with.
Fair, yeah.
And as he continued to work out, like literally 15 seconds later, he pulled something on something he's been doing for 2 years that he's never done anything. And I said, my comment to him was, well, that's what happens as soon as we believe the press, right? As soon as
don't believe the hype.
As soon as we fall into the hype of what everybody else thinks, then it's like, look at me go. Right?
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. There's so much truth to that. And that is a danger in the arts that is very real. I've seen it with so many young musicians where, because we also evaluate people in the arts, this is a bit of a side rant, but we evaluate people based on their age group, right? Even the way we host competitions, and the idea of art and competition makes no sense to me, but we do it. Oh, this is the 9 to 12 category. Oh, this is the 12 to 16 category. It's like, fine, but what that ingrains in a young person, in my mind, is that, oh, I'm 14 and I'm special for 14. But what they don't perhaps understand is they're going to be 20 one day and they're not going to be special at 20 the way they are now if they don't push. And perhaps more importantly, it doesn't matter if you're special or not. It doesn't matter if you think you're special or if someone else thinks you're special. That's irrelevant. What matters is you're doing the work because it will make you better and it will make other people happy. And my mom, I think, is the best teacher in that. And I always tell friends that she said this, and she still says it to me. She would always say, I'd win some piano award, right? Mom, I won first place in this thing. She'd go, yes, Nico, you're very special, just like everyone else. And that was always that tag, because it was a reminder of like, you're not doing anything.
Yeah, acknowledging you're special.
You've done the work. You've done the work.
But so is everybody else.
But so is everyone else. Anyone can do the work.
Yeah.
And then the inverse of that was my dad, who I think this is the greatest thing anyone has ever said to me. I'm all over the place here, but I was 8 years old watching my favorite show, which was Beast Wars.
Yep.
Those old Transformers. And it had this heavy metal. You probably would have. It was like
little chuggy chug.
Exactly. So many triplets, like, and then this beast shredding guitar solo would come in. Beast Wars, and like there'd be like fire on the screen, and it was very exciting at that age, right? Yeah. and I'd be transfixed, right, just sitting there Saturday morning, whatever it was. And one day I told my dad, I said, oh, it's on. Come listen to this. Come listen. And my dad's listened to so much music, working in theater, and he came over and he went, He was very gravelly. His voice was down here.
Kimasabi.
Yeah, Kimasabi. He goes, Nick. He's also one of the only people who call me Nick. He goes, Nick, forgive the language, but he would say, you could write this shit. And then he walked away, and I was like, what? But again, and then he reiterated later on, he goes, if it has been done,
it can be
done again.
Right.
Life, words to live by.
Right. So I know we have time constraints as you're getting ready to go off on some massive journey into the eastern parts of Canada.
Here we go again. Yeah.
And we're going to miss you here. Obviously, we're going to miss you here. So, Unity. How did you end up at Unity? So I'd love to know. Story. I'd love to know that. And then, and don't feed me any crap. Like,
no, I'll give
what
it to you
is
straight,
the Unity
boss.
message? Like, how? Like, does it resonate with you while you're here? Or are you just like, hey, I get paid to be here and I'm happy to be here?
I'll give you the whole. All right. I'll give you both sides. Sides. So in terms of how I got here, it actually started at a nightclub.
Yeah.
As all church gigs,
all spiritual gigs start out in nightclubs, of course.
Let's be clear here. So I was playing at what was called the Red Martini Grill at the time. It's now called the Nanaimo Bar.
That's a way better name, the Red Martini Grill. Come
so
on.
Cool. It was so cool.
Who wouldn't want to go to the Red Martini Grill?
And the owner, his name was Tom Loza, and he was like classy and oh my God, and a little bit brash, but so delightful. Oh, I missed that man. I think he's in Mexico now. But so I was playing down there, and Bill Robinson, who's a local, radio icon and philanthropist and lovely human being, he was coming to Unity at the time quite regularly. And he brought Polly Dozier, who was the Reverend at the time. And I don't know if you probably never met Polly. No. Some people will probably remember Polly, but she was like 5'0". She was all teeth. And I mean that as a good, like just big, giant, toothy grin. Right. And dripping with like jewels. Right. Like all the time. Like decked out. She always looked like she was about to go to the Met Gala. Like every service, lunches, you name it.
She had a way, and that was it.
She walked in, and she would kind of like float into the room. Hello, and it was always this presentational. And I was like, what an interesting woman. Like she caught your eye in that sense, right? And when they came to this jazz gig I was playing, we were playing some way out there wackadoodle jazz. And at the end of it, Bill says, "Hey, I brought Polly here to meet you, and she's impressed with your playing, and we'd like to offer you a gig. It's every week, Sunday at École Océane, I think it was. Mm-hmm. You're going to play piano for this service." And, I showed up. First week, Heather Hazeltine was the song leader. And I just clicked with it right away. I was like, this is a cool gig. I had no idea the message. I had no idea what Unity was. I had no idea what I was about to experience. Polly's focus at Unity was very much, at least at the time, from what I recall, it was much more based or focused on this idea of like manifestation and like financial stuff. And like, it was very, like, it was kind of going over my head a little bit.
Right.
And so here's where we get into like, what does Nico feel when he's at Unity? Because it changes over the years.
Right.
A lot. 16-year-old Nico, who is first time playing at Unity, or 17, something like that.
Wow, that early.
Yeah.
Wow,
I was a kid.
Wow.
I was, and I say this with a modicum of regret, I was the most combative, angry, viciously debative atheist you've ever met. Like, I'd give Christopher Hitchens a run for his money. Right. Like, I went for the jugular in every argument.
Atheism is a belief too, right?
Fundamentally, the belief, exactly. No, yeah. And I've gone down that path.
I'm sure, yeah.
No.
And I mean that in a loving way.
No, I know. It's good. It's true. And the funny thing was like, I would, like, for example, my first girlfriend at the time, she was, devoutly Christian. She was like Roman Catholic growing up. And I basically fought her until she admitted that she didn't believe in God. Like, I mean, she was on her way.
I will break you.
But I was like, I will change your life. Like, it was, I mean, it was totally ego driven, right? Because it had nothing to do with what I felt. It was like, I need to convince you, right? I'm going to show you something.
I will be right.
I will be right, and you will be wrong. Not my best moment. But so I came in, and so you can imagine, here's this woman dripping in jewels, preaching about how we should just
prosperity consciousness.
Exactly. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I will admit, like that. I was sitting, but here's the other thing I noticed. Everyone was so sweet and so nice and very huggy. I wasn't a huggy person back then. In fact, I grew up with very much an aversion to being touched. And eye contact was difficult too, which is ironically a lot of what I do now is like staring at people and touching them, right? Yeah. So here I am, standoffish, kind of angry, but also like, hey, it's a gig. And when you're 16 and you got a weekly gig, it's like, oh my God,
I've made it.
This is the big time. And at the time, we had a bass player for a while. We had a hand percussionist for a while, April Laurie. We had Marisha Devoyne on bass. Robin, this guy, came in and played hand percussion. So the band was really happening too. And Heather Hazeltine and I were like this, like from go. Her and I were just tight, like instant best friends. Done, still friends to this day. And so I was like, okay, Nico, put your inner monologue aside. Now, I can't tell you when it happened. But there's a point where I stopped going, well, this is ridiculous. And I started going, well, I disagree with all of that, but that was good. I'm going to think about that. And then I would go away and think about it. And then, fast forward a couple of years and it was, oh, I really liked all of that. That one part, yeah, but whatever. I don't need to take it all. You don't need to eat everything that's on the plate.
Right.
You know, I'm just eating my vegetables. Great. Done. And then I remember there was a point where I was away. I think I was living in Vancouver at this point. I'd moved away. I was like in my early 20s, mid 20s. And I started saying things on occasion. Words would come out of my mouth, expressions, ideas that I had heard people at Unity say, particularly in the talks.
Right.
There was this tall reverend, I think he passed away. I forget his name, Jordan or something, a real big, tall guy, kind of like fire and brimstone dude. But you know, he said some things that really like got me. And all of a sudden I'm like, weird. What's going on here? At this point now, going all the way down the rabbit hole, when I come here on a Sunday, I fully expect to be completely engaged with the talk. Sometimes I would say that my vocabulary is different. You know, like sometimes there'll be certain concepts that are expressed a certain way that I would personally use a different word. But to me, that's the same as, because I've heard, you know, different conversations. I hear the congregation milling about, you know, that's the same as when I hear someone going like, well, I don't like it when we use the God word. And it's like, okay, so I'm doing the same thing that person's doing, right? I'm fixating on the P under the mattress, right? You know, just lay down, you know, have a nap. So these days I come in fact, in all earnestness, if you could wake me up on a Sunday morning that I had off, I would totally come. Like I would come in and hang out.
Right.
And there have been talks, particularly in the past year or two, that have like left me shaken. Like I've walked away and been like, from you and from Patricia, where I've been like, and Vicky and some of the others, where I'm just like, Amanda, and I'm like, I'm shook. Like I'm shook. But this last Sunday, there's a couple of times you laid down some truths, and I was like, oh, that I feel that. I'm gonna try not to cry right now. So that's been the journey from you know, I always wanted to write this little novella or something, like the angry atheist's journey, right? Because that's what I was. I was the angry atheist. Now I don't know what I am, but I think that a lot of the principles that you speak of are very much in alignment with my ethics and my philosophy. I think that a lot of them are eminently practical, which I also really admire. I have an issue with philosophy and religion and spirituality that is not concrete in its effect, right? It's just...
We're very similar.
Okay, there you go.
You're
the same way.
Well, as my mother always said, I was named after Thomas.
Right.
Doubting Thomas.
Doubting Thomas.
And then she always wondered, why do you doubt? Why don't you believe?
Why don't you just accept this?
Yes, and it's like, well...
That's part of the game.
It's part of my journey I need to have something. And so I really hear that. And thank you for sharing that, by the way. But I really hear the you know, because I was the same walking into Unity. I was not looking, at least I don't think I was looking for anything particular, but I was looking for something that had some truth to it in a way that wasn't just foo-foo stuff, that was out in some pie in the sky kind of idea, that had actually some laws behind it that I could compare to, you know, the law of gravity. Here's how it is. And so like something like the 12 powers, I can totally see, I have all of those.
100%.
I have those abilities.
100%.
I can choose to be in them or ignore them completely. But it doesn't mean they're not there.
That was a big thing. The way you said that, like I think that when I first really started to accept, again, like I think my personal doctrine is like part Buddhist, part, you know, Jainist. You know, there's a lot of secular philosophers. It's all mixed in there. But there's a lot of what I've heard here throughout the years, because it's been a lot of hours, right? And this idea of like, I'm going to start from point A with a theory of how I could do better. I'm going to apply, you know, process B, and I'm going to get to point C. And if I don't get to point C, then process B probably wasn't the right choice. Try again. And there have been many things that I've heard here where, you know, people are talking and they're talking about the powers or just different beliefs, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you could actually take that and apply it. I've been reading this philosopher named Byung-Chul Han.
Yeah, you sure. By the way, I did
check it out.
I did start to check them out. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Yeah. It's a little heady sometimes, but then it gets into the meat of it. And what I like about him is, same with like Marcus Aurelius. I think we talked about that at one point. It's like, okay, you want to do better. Great. How? It's not just be a better person. Stop being so sinful. Stop being so
that's
evil.
the pie in the sky stuff to me.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
like, well, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah. Like, oh wow, I'm having these intrusive thoughts. Well, deal with it. Like, I suffered from OCD for many years, to the point where I actually had to like seek psychiatric help at one point for it, and it was successful. I'm much better off now, but I remember talking to someone and they were like, "Well, just stop doing that." And I'm like, "Yeah, thanks." Mm-hmm. And not to compare mental health issues and mental illness with just general humanity, but I think it's on the spectrum of telling someone who suffers from bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, OCD, whatever, to just, heal thyself, physician, fine, but how? Mm-hmm. How? Sure, ultimately, it was me that got me out of that, mm-hmm. and that's very much I think in line with a lot of what Unity teaches. It's like, it wasn't this outside force that waved a wand and said, "Hey, you're healed." It was like I had to take steps and actions, accept certain truths, move through difficult emotions and, mm-hmm. and thoughts, and really, there's a lot of talk about, your thoughts and how that affects. As someone who struggled with OCD, that was my life. Yeah. It was like my thoughts were the enemy, and I had to learn to observe them, embrace them, allow some of them to pass through me, challenge some of them, restructure them.
Notice them to even just to begin with step. Noticing like, oh, this is
the
going
hardest
on.
one.
And then it sounds like you sought outside coaching, like in a way. So it brings me back to that guy. Like, you're not a 17 or 18 minute a game guy.
So make me that.
100%. And so now I'll do whatever you point me at. I will do that if it's going to make me that thing.
This, I think, is the thing that I personally have struggled with the most in my life, which I think is the word, what we're talking about here on some level, is the idea of surrender. And whether it's on the bandstand or whether it's at a service, listening to one of you talk, or whether it's just day-to-day life, mm-hmm. that's something I know, and I know a lot of my friends do. We struggle with that idea of surrender. And I think some of that is just childhood, whatever nonsense. Mm-hmm. But I think also there's a cultural aspect of, we have this intense sort of emphasis on individuality, which I'm not opposed to. But with that, I think there's an underbelly of me. I can do it. And it's like, yes, you can, and you should, and you must. No one's gonna pull you out of the quicksand. But if you don't listen to the person outside of the quicksand telling you how to grab the branch and pull yourself out, you might sink. Mm-hmm. So there's a delicate balance there. And I know for me, I think maybe the thing that I learned the most coming to these talks at Unity was I surrendered to ideals that were outside of my comfort.
Right.
Spiritual ideas were never part of my vernacular growing up, but musical ideas were. And something you said a while back, you said something about, I think it was in passing, but you're like, playing music, like that used to be my church, or that was church. And maybe last week. And I remember like that, again, like rang that gong for me, where it's like, yes, spiritual ideas in this sense were not part of my vernacular, not part of my toolbox.
Right.
But they were, in the sense that I knew what it felt like to surrender to music, to trust other musicians, to follow a conductor, to seek beauty, to discipline my mind and my body to do a certain thing. And these things all apply themselves to a spiritual practice. Mm-hmm. And when I started sort of making those connections, that's when Unity started making a lot more sense to me.
That's really well put, because it is in any endeavor that we take on, it is that game of applying yourself. And there's something you said that I think is really important as well, as we crave this idea that the I am and the individual is so important, but that only works in the context of getting yourself organized. From that point on, it's community.
Bingo. 100%.
Like, you can't serve community when you're internally out of harmony or out of balance.
Yeah.
But once that balance comes in, then it is all about the community, because the I am is no longer the focus, but there needs to be some part of the focus that is on, hey, I got to get this. It's that old adage of the plane, right? Put the mask on you first.
That's right.
So you can serve, because you're no good dead.
No.
To others.
If you're saying there, you're no, exactly that. I used to the moment that started to become clear to me was my jazz piano teacher in university, the late great Bob Murphy. He said to me, "Jazz is a democracy." And I thought, well, that's an interesting, like take on it. Jazz is a democracy. I was like, okay, thanks. But he said, no, hear me out. He goes, you spend 10,000 hours getting yourself in order. You learn the vocabulary, the history, the tradition, the feel, all of it, all the minutia. You come to the bandstand. Now, there's no expectations of what's going to happen now. Someone chooses a song. You start to interpret the song. You interpret it this way. You're trying to go left. And the band's going right. If you've got a good idea, and everyone is open to the democracy, which everyone should be, if you've got a good idea, the band will follow you. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a good idea, you should follow them. And the last point he always said was, and if you have an idea and you're trying to force the band to follow you, you're not playing music anymore. Now you're just laying a trip. Get off the bandstand. You do not deserve to be there.
Wow.
So I try to take that into day-to-day life too, where it's like, hey, I got this idea. I want to, even in a conversation, right? Mm-hmm. A conversation is much like that. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. Ooh, oh, that's actually really interesting. Let's go this way.
Yeah.
But if you get two people who just come in and they want to go their own way, so there's that, again, that individual versus collective too, of the individual prepares so that they may come together on the bandstand with other individuals and form the collective.
Yeah.
Same thing with choral music. That's why I find that. And the symphony. Yeah. You got 70 people up there who've spent 10,000 hours plus a piece. And then someone goes up and goes, we're all together, not for me, through me. I am the conduit. I'm gonna pull us all together here. I'm gonna hold all the threads, and we're all gonna move together now. Ready? Mm-hmm. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And that when that happens, like this is also the basis of just my political philosophy, my ethical, all of it. It's like the individual is the grain of sand, the society, the community is the beach, right? And you can't just try to force your way up to the water. Like you just gotta let it move. Yeah.
You know what you're saying is, as you know, as I shared, I joined this swing band, right?
Yes.
And so something I've never done before at this level. I've been in, 3-piece. I've been in a reggae band, which had, 8 or 9 musicians at the most at any time. Background vocals and percussion and stuff, right? So all of that, but not anything on this level, and a genre that I don't understand very well. I don't have the regiment. I don't have all the.
You're learning a new language.
Totally. But you know what you just said, which is really great, is that there's times where I'm hanging on.
Yes. For
dear life. Like I am behind everybody.
Yes.
Trying to find my place in the band.
Trying to find your place in the parade.
So that, because ultimately I know as a drummer, my job is to hold it down.
Yes.
But I need to find out where the heck I am first, right? Before I can hold it down.
That's a really interesting thing. Well, and in jazz, I think we also just, relating to you as a drummer there, in jazz, there are different philosophies. Like I think this is a thing that I've noticed in jazz and rock, and I think it's actually there's probably analogies here to society and culture, but it's like in rock, the bass player and the drummer are like, we are keeping the time. Everything is here. Stay with me. And the guitar players, go in and singers go in. In jazz, especially when you get really deep into it, it's more like, the drummer is playing a time-keeping instrument, but we're all the drummers here. We're all sharing this burden. And really great drummers in jazz, are often more expressive in that sense. So there's some of it is, being the support, being the foundation, doing the work so that you can lay that foundation and people can rest comfortably on that. Mm-hmm. But it also works the other way, where those up on the pyramid, if you will, if you imagine that tower of the rhythm, the harmony, the melody, like those people can also kind of reach down and pull and keep you there, so there's a suspense as well as a support. And so it sounds like what you're experiencing is sort of that contradiction.
Well, it feels like
support from above.
It feels like as long as I don't know what I'm doing, I can't play within It's more that. It's not so much
Sure.
that I think,
Okay.
oh, I need to run the time.
Yeah.
It's that I'm hanging on
You're not able to let it.
to figure out where I'm supposed to be and how I'm supposed to serve.
Yes.
And then on the songs where I get it,
Yeah.
then I can play.
Yes.
Now I can let go and I don't need to worry about the time. I can play within the music.
Okay, what you just said, I don't have to worry about the time. See, like coming back to Unity, this is something like, especially as a musician and self-employed, a lot of, Unity's philosophies around money and prosperity always baffled me. Because what do you mean you don't have to worry? You don't have to worry about the time?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about the money? You don't have to worry about the outcome? It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But there it is, right? Like here you are doing the work so that you may release yourself to the process the same way that in Unity, it's like, okay, do the spiritual work so that you can release yourself to living your life.
Yeah. Surrender. Yeah.
Scary. It's scary. I've heard people talk about it different ways too. I have a friend who calls it being owner. It's like once you've really got yourself, it's like now you are owner. And that doesn't mean you're in charge of anyone else, but you are owner. You have put your own house together, and now you may be owner with others.
Yeah.
And together you can be bigger. You can be more.
It's pretty hard to serve anybody when you're a mess.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I've fluctuated in and out of that in my life, and I can
we
attest.
But we all do. Like we all have these moments where we're just like, what the.
Yeah.
And then we all have those moments where it feels like everything is working and conspiring in my favor.
Truly.
And the hope that I have with Unity is that I can stay there more often than be in that place that I used to be in a lot, where life was lifing me and not. Yeah, I wasn't playing in life. I was surviving my life.
You were holding on.
Yeah, I was like,
I just need to keep.
If I can just
Yeah. Excuse me, I've got a residual cough here, but 100%. I mean, I remember, this is a bit of a jump and a bit morbid, but I remember when my dad passed away when I was 21. My dad passed away, my grandma passed away, my grandfather passed away, my other grandfather, my other grandmother, and my dog, all within like a year and a half. It was like boom, 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 boom. And I remember listening to this Ani DeFranco song, and I was really quite wrecked, as you can imagine. And she said, "The kindness that is laid upon strangers is more than I can explain." And, in the context of the song, she's talking about, trying to hitchhike through America. But there's this bigger picture, right? And for me in that moment, what I heard Ani say to me, who's a great songwriter, was like, you don't have to believe that other people are going to help you. You don't have to believe that this is all going to work itself out. You don't have to believe that there's happiness ahead. You just have to keep walking, and the kindness allowed to you by strangers will be more than you can explain. Mm-hmm. So you can think about it all you want, but you just have to let this go, because the community, the world, God, whatever you want to call it, is going to come around and it's going to take care of you. And I mean, I've seen that traveling too, communities where there's not a lot of money. I volunteered in Nairobi, in the slums of Nairobi, teaching music, and 1.5 million people living on $5 or less a month. And, everyone should be starving. Everyone should be freaking out. Everyone should be, this is terrible. These are the worst conditions human beings are living on the planet almost, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone's just smiling and taking care of each other.
Yeah.
It's like everyone knew that we were all going to get through no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think I'm getting a little philosophical here, but I think there's an absence of that in our lives, in our political lives, in our personal lives. I think Unity does a really good job of expressing that in a really clear way. Mm-hmm. It's like, you may think that, the political class, the economic, whatever it may be, all these issues that are facing, and whatever your opinions may be of them, you may think it's unresolvable. You may think it's entrenched. It's an impossibility to see it through. It's like, it's not your job to see the end game.
Yeah.
Just try to get yourself in order so that you can actually play. Mm-hmm. Whether that's, protesting for your cause, whether that's, volunteering for something, whether that's just taking care of your family. I mean, gosh, that's enough right there. It's more than enough.
Yeah.
Just saying hi, being kind to your neighbor, checking in on them. But it really does come from that place. And I think that Unity expresses the idea of trust beyond trust beyond expected outcome, which like that definitely sunk in for me over the years.
Wow.
Don't just look and say, I want that outcome, and it's like, in fact, don't even worry about the outcome. Just come along, just walk.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The more that you hang on to an idea, then you can't even see the goodness that's there because you're so stuck on this of it looking a certain way. If it doesn't look the way I had imagined it, then it can't possibly be what I wanted.
Yes.
As opposed to the surrender.
Yes.
Principle.
In fact, unity was a huge part of a time in my life where I was quite challenged. When I was about 18 or 19, I injured my right arm, practicing too much actually. And I had this image because I was playing saxophone 5-6 hours a day. I was going to go to New York. I was going to be a jazz saxophonist. I was going to record, period, done. And anything less was unacceptable. Coming back to that young Nico, right? Of like, I'm going to be this thing, and anything less there's the danger, right? And I remember getting to a point where I couldn't pick up my toothbrush. My hand was so messed up, and thinking, okay, I'll never be able to play again. And my friend James McRae went, hey, don't you play the piano still though? Can you still play the piano? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm still playing piano at Unity, but like, again,
that's not what I want to do.
That's not what I want. I want to be this. I'm going to go to New York, right? See, there's the ego running away. And then I remember coming to Unity, and I probably had a cloud over my head for those months, maybe even a year, and people saying things like, hey, just go with the flow, just trust it, just embrace. Don't be attached to the outcome. Don't be attached to this idea. Let these ideas go. And Patricia, all these people are saying these things, and it's going right over my head. I'm like. Yeah. No, I am holding on to this idea.
I'm going to dig in.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, no, I found a whole new career path. Same thing with COVID. It's like that happened, and I was like, and it was Unity where I started bringing people together to start singing. And that has become the greatest joy of my life.
Wow.
Rest in peace, the old building, but meeting in that old building. And I remember Ken Thompson and Sharon and all these people, Linda King, all these different people coming in and filming people one at a time to put together that little Christmas music video thing. And just thinking in the moment, wow, this is just the best time I've had playing music in like 10 years.
Wow.
And it's in the middle of the worst time
out there.
Yeah, especially musically. Yeah. So Unity is central in many ways for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Well, I know we're stretched for time today.
Oh yeah, we're getting close.
Yeah.
Aren't we?
So
wow.
I'm gonna save more for another time. Nico Rhodes joining me today. Thank you, Nico. Thank you.
My pleasure, Thomas.
And just thank you for I share with a lot of people that I have this, like, how fortunate I am that coming back to music. And it was the same with Josh, right? That somebody would welcome me to play music when I hadn't played. I had put my drum kit away in like 2002 or something like that. I stopped playing. Yeah. And then, to be able to play with somebody that has your skill set and your level of playing to accept me, right?
Well, I'm not going to accept you though. No.
I'm not looking for any.
No, but I got challenged that. I got challenged for 1 second.
Just let me finish.
Okay, you go.
To just accept me and allow me to fumble my way back to finding some of my skill sets, right? Because the drum set was foreign. It had become foreign to me. It wasn't my buddy anymore like it used to be.
I get it.
Right. So to have tolerated me to find those legs again, those training wheels, has been really a blessing. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I'm not going to say no to that. But I will say, I remember when you started playing, and I being, what it is like being a musician and having your ears attuned, right? So I could hear you when you were just going for it, and I could hear you when you'd reach for something and you go, oh crap.
Yeah.
And I could see it on your face too. There was this little, I used to be able to do that.
My head's hearing the stuff.
Like I know it's in there, right? And what I've, it's actually been really inspiring is because as the services have gone on, it got to the point now where you're doing something, I'm going, oh my goodness. Like what is happening over here? And that's really exciting. Maybe just summarizing on some level, it's like, you surrendered to the process of coming back home to your instrument. And that's way harder than coming to it the first time. Mm-hmm. The first time you discover it, it's joy. The second time there's fear, there's what ifs.
I'm not nearly as good as I used to be.
Yeah.
Like this is embarrassing.
How do I?
Yeah.
How do I do this? And so watching you go through that process has actually been really, really cool. Really cool. And your drumming sounds like, as the kids say, no cap.
Yeah.
Your drumming sounds really
Thank
good,
you.
man.
Yeah.
Like really good. The pocket's good. And I think, also watching your spiritual work has been really inspiring in that sense. So yeah, like it's mutual. Like watching you go through what you've been going through spiritually, I think again, just saying like we have a lot of the same tendencies, I think, in terms of how we approach spirituality, and seeing you do it was very helpful for me.
Wow.
Because seeing other people do it, I was like, yeah, but that's the kind of person you are. You're one of those people who can do that. I don't have that in me. I don't know how to do that. And then seeing you being like, I didn't know how to do this, and now I'm the guy doing it. And I'm like, this guy, he figured something out. So works both ways, man.
Awesome. Works both ways.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good to know you. Thank you, my friend.
Cheers, brother.
All right. And for everybody out there, thank you for joining us today. Namaste.
Namaste, friends. Yeah. Thanks.